Hello, and welcome back to Road to Wilds, a Monster Hunter retrospective. This episode is kind of a part 2 to the first video of the series, so if you haven't seen the first part, you can click here to watch it now. But with that out of the way, let's get on with the show. Freedom. Capcom USA chose this word as the subtitle for what is known as Monster Hunter Portable in Japan. I suppose in their mind, the Freedom subtitle represented how players have the freedom to play the game whenever they want. However, I find that Monster Hunter Freedom is, in a way, freedom from some of the major drawbacks of the original game on the PS2. Not only that, but the amount of content added to Monster Hunter Freedom, to me, make it the definitive way to play what is colloquially called the first generation of the Monster Hunter series. At least as far as the Western releases go. Since I'm covering what is the G or Ultimate version of Monster Hunter 1, I figured I would slightly change the format of questions I'd be addressing in this video. So, what questions will I be tackling? What are some of the improvements from Monster Hunter 1 to Monster Hunter Freedom? What flaws hold Monster Hunter Freedom back? And finally, should a new fan to the series start with Monster Hunter Freedom? Like in the first video, I'll answer these questions based on my own subjective opinion. And also like the first video, my impressions were gathered by clearing the offline village quests and reaching a credit screen. I did play a bit more past that, partly for fun and partly to highlight some of the other improvements Monster Hunter Freedom made to Monster Hunter 1. Now, for a little background with regard to my experience playing Monster Hunter Freedom on the PSP back in 2006. Monster Hunter was in an interesting place back in 2006. Monster Hunter 2, or as it's sometimes called Monster Hunter DOS, was released in Japan in February. Now, I was rabid for Monster Hunter games after my time playing the first game on the PS2. Gaming sites of the day, like Game Trailers, would post trailers and gameplay of Monster Hunter 2. You could say I was a little more than disappointed to never get a Western release date for the game back then. Thankfully, some wonderful fans, BreakArts, made an English patch for Monster Hunter 2, link in the description. However, that did not help young TKSA back in 2006, who was craving more Monster Hunter. While we never got Monster Hunter 2, Capcom did release Monster Hunter Freedom to the PSP later that year in May for the West. Fans had to wait another year to get even the slightest taste of Monster Hunter 2 in the form of Monster Hunter Freedom 2 on the PSP. That said, Monster Hunter Freedom 1 still kept me glued to my UMD player and solidified me even more as a fan of the franchise. My time playing the multiplayer in Monster Hunter Freedom 1 was limited to playing the game's ad hoc online gathering hall with my brother and a friend. It was great being able to play with two friends in real life as opposed to strangers over my unreliable 2005 internet connection. My memories of playing as a group with my brother and friend back then kind of blends together with the other PSP Monster Hunter games. I know in one of the games, we all got far enough to hunt Fatalis and to even be able to bring him down. Speaking of the multiplayer and the online content of Monster Hunter 1, let's talk about some of the improvements Monster Hunter Freedom brought to what Monster Hunter 1 established. Monster Hunter Freedom right out of the gate addresses one of the biggest issues I had with Monster Hunter 1, its slow and boring introduction. While it might still be advisable to do some of the more mundane tasks at the beginning, like killing Aptonoth for meat, mining, or gathering bugs, the game doesn't force you to do so to progress to the fun stuff, the hunting. As soon as you start the game, the village chief offers you a quest to hunt 3 Velociprey. Another issue addressed in Monster Hunter Freedom 1 is the access to one of every type of weapon from the start. Oh, isn't that nice? Look at that. Well, we gotta go Lance, right? For some reason, I thought this feature wasn't added until later games, so I was very happy to see an assortment of weapons in my item box at the start of the game. It also bears noting that the game offers you the choice of if you are a beginner or not at the start of the game. Alright, let's rock. Are you a beginner? No. Save this character? Yes. In my playthrough in preparation for this video, I did not choose the beginner option, so I cannot speak of its efficacy. But that option is there. One thing that greatly improves the general flow of the game is the access to common but necessary materials and items outside of gathering them during hunts and quests. A prime example is the blue mushroom. From time to time, the large bagwoman in town will sell blue mushrooms. This reduced the necessity to having to gather them all the time on hunts. Her inventory rotates, so she may not always have blue mushrooms, but having her sell them along with nitro shrooms, catalysts, and other important items really streamlines the entire experience of the game. Another great addition is the Kokoto Farm. Here you are able to mine, fish, and gather items without having to leave on a quest. You may only gather a few items in between hunts, but these small gatherings snowball into a huge benefit. Like with the items from the large bagwoman, items gathered on the Kokoto Farm makes it less necessary to stop before or during every hunt to mine, gather bugs, mushrooms, or plants. The Kokoto Farm also has an interesting upgrade feature that allows you to gather higher quality items as you upgrade the farm. There are a lot of odd or janky things that were updated, improved, or just straight up added to the overall experience that make playing Monster Hunter Freedom that much better than Monster Hunter 1. Let's cover creating and improving weapons and armor first. You no longer have to be carrying the materials necessary to upgrade equipment in Monster Hunter Freedom. For example, if you wanted to upgrade your Iron Lance to an Iron Lance Plus, you can have the iron and whatever other necessary materials in your item box. This cuts down a lot of running back and forth from the box and is an overall nice quality of life addition. The skills system on armor is completely overhauled from the first game, or maybe the numbers are just visible to players now. I'm still not really sure. Either way, you can see what skills you will activate once equipping armor. This is a godsend since it no longer requires a guide to know what benefits you can expect to get from your armor outside of defenses and resistances. There is just more stuff in general in Monster Hunter Freedom versus Monster Hunter 1. We have our first monster variants in Monster Hunter Freedom. Most are basic palette swaps with minor changes to their attack parameters and behaviors. Some may have one unique attack or gimmick that might catch you off guard the first time you fight them. For example, Black Gravios loves to spam his beam attack. White Monoblos seems to be faster and has more HP. And Green Plesioth has the hip check attack whose hitbox is so wild, it would make some of the most egregious hitboxes in Dark Souls 2 green with envy. Anyway, with all the monster variants comes different versions of armor and weapons. This gives a lot more variety when it comes to aesthetics, as well as build variety, for lack of a better term. The game does a really cheeky thing where they don't warn you in the quest name or description that you'll be fighting a monster variant. This led to some fun surprises in my playthrough. Oh, it's Blue Cuckoo! Yo, let's go! Oh, whoops, there we go. They didn't tell me. It's blue! It's that boy. Yeah, that's what happens. You played yourself. There's also a bigger variety of stuff to do. Along with the Kokoto Farm, there was also the Feline Kitchen and Training School. I believe in Monster Hunter 1 there was something that was close to the Feline Kitchen in the town, where you could order food that would buff you, or not, for the next hunt. The Feline Kitchen serves that role in Monster Hunter Freedom. It's also cute and pretty funny. It's a welcome addition to the franchise and is something that stays with the series going forward in one form or another. Next, we have the Training School. The school allows you to undertake hunts of particular monsters using pre-made set of armor, weapons, and items. I would say it varies in effectiveness of teaching hunters how to use different weapons, but it's a fun and rewarding distraction that doesn't require any investment of prep or resources. Wait, am I forgetting something? I wrote out this whole script, and I have a gnawing feeling that I've left something out. What is it? Oh yeah, Yian Garuga. Yian Garuga was first introduced in Western releases in Monster Hunter Freedom. From what I can tell, his implementation is slightly different in Monster Hunter G, where he technically first debuted. That said, he's given the same treatment in both introductions. In Monster Hunter Freedom, you take on a fairly mundane Slay Tin Velociprey quest, and BAM! Yian Garuga appears! This kind of started the trend of bait and switch or surprise hunts that would appear in later games in the series. It bears mentioning that Yian Garuga is the only completely new monster introduced in Monster Hunter Freedom. And let's be honest, how new is Garuga really? It's as if you took a Kutku, a Rathian, a Megaphone, and a can of purple paint, then stuffed them all in the teleporter from the Fly, and ta-da! Garuga! But seriously, all the new monsters are variants or subspecies of existing monsters from Monster Hunter 1. So Garuga's kinda special. He's the first, and I'm using big quotation marks here, new monster in the franchise. If you watched the playthrough I got most of the footage from this video from, you know Garuga is one of my favorite monsters. He was always a challenging fight for me, and I love the thrill I'd get when I'd hunt him. Fighting Garuga almost feels like a dance. And his armor set, aesthetically, is an acquired taste. Some of his weapons look really cool, and they are apparently game-breakingly powerful in Monster Hunter Freedom 1. I also love his theme. It always gets my blood pumping. But yeah, I noticed I hadn't used any footage of Garuga while editing this video, so I thought I'd dedicate a little section to him. Thanks, Garuga. Wow, Monster Hunter Freedom really stepped things up from the first game. While Monster Hunter Freedom takes some massive strides forward, there are a few things that hold it back from greatness, such as this section is kind of a mixed bag. There are slight improvements to the camera that I noted while playing Monster Hunter Freedom from Monster Hunter 1. The camera doesn't seem to lag or slow down as much when it gets hung up on geometry, though it still gets hung up on geometry. Other than the slightly more peppy camera, not much has changed in that regard. I did the playthrough in preparation for this video on an emulator, so I was able to use a PS5 controller. I think you could map the D-pad, which controls the camera, to the right analog stick, but honestly, I'm more comfortable controlling it with the claw grip, and I wanted my experience to be close to how I controlled the game back on the PSP. Speaking of the PSP, because the PSP has less buttons than a PS2 controller, the developers had to kind of condense the controls to accommodate. The L1 and L2 buttons share the L button on the PSP, as do the R1 and R2 buttons on the R button. This means certain inputs that were a single button before, such as drawing your weapon into a block, had to be reworked. In Monster Hunter 1, you would press the R2 button while your weapon is sheathed to draw it into a blocking stance. To do so in Monster Hunter Freedom, you must press triangle, circle, and R together. While this isn't impossible, I did find myself failing to get the input in clutch moments. Okay, I was actually not mashing, but I was trying to activate what I just did. And it just... Monster Hunter Freedom was naturally going to need to be scaled down in the visual department when being ported from the PS2 to the PSP. I personally don't find this to be a big deal, as I find the art style for the early Monster Hunter games ages quite nicely relative to other games that may have a more realistic art style. However, the decline in texture quality on monsters, armor, weapons, and environments are fairly noticeable. So this was something that held back the first game on the PS2, sure, but it bears mentioning again for this game. The small monsters are just as lethal as they were before, maybe even more so. Let's take a look at a few clips. Yeah, that's what I was afraid of. Jeez! No! Oh my god. Oh no. And cats? Oh no. This is hell! And I can't see. Where is it? Get me off this ride. Get me out. Tail. Oh, I thought I was out of range of that. I specifically hopped back. Alright, that's probably a death right there. Yep. That was, the Ginprey special. Wow. I probably should have let it go to sleep. Oh, well. Oh my god, the EO prey. Vultures. I can't. Okay. That was like Hail Mary time. Oh my goodness, the EO prey. What the heck, dude? Chill. Look at this screen. Look at this. The EO prey. Ah! So, that's it? No other noteworthy flaws in Monster Hunter Freedom? Well, not exactly. Let's talk about Azure Rathalos and the volcano. Let me start by saying Azure Rathalos is a favorite monster of mine. He's up there with Monoblos, Garuga, Cedius. For me, maybe right behind him. So when I saw I had a quest to hunt Azure Rathalos, or as I called him in my playthrough, it's blue! I was pretty excited. I love the new coat of paint Azure Rathalos sports, and the skills on his armor often synergize well with my playstyle in most games. Unfortunately, the novelty of hunting a favorite monster of mine quickly wore off after a few minutes of engaging him. Azure may have one of the most obnoxious AIs of all monsters in Monster Hunter Freedom. He will usually be flying and firing fireballs or doing his claw attack, both of which are easy to avoid, but this leads to a lot of time waiting for him to land. So that's pretty annoying, but manageable. Hell, you can use the fact that he constantly lands to get in some easy damage. But I specifically mentioned fighting him in the Volcano Zone, which takes place on a quest called the Smoke-Clad King. The early parts of the hunt are fine. I fought him in the zones without lava. The only annoying or difficult parts about that were the Bullfingo. It wasn't until the hunt moved to the lava zones of 6 and 7 where things took a frustrating turn. Just chill for like a second. Alright, you can fucking have it. Sorry for my language, but like, I just want to fight this damn Rathalos. Azure has an annoying habit of sitting in lava where you can't hit him, while you must stand back and wait for him to either charge or fly out of it. Hopefully, onto ground you can walk on and not into more lava. Now let's say you persevere enough to get Azure to limp and to fly to a zone to rest. Great, he's low on HP and he'll be down no problem, right? Well, maybe. That is assuming you followed the first 3 rules of AVGN's Ghost and Goblins video.
My rules are: number 1, get the knife. Number 2, get the knife. Number 3, get the knife.
If you didn't get the knife, and you're using a weapon that isn't a bowgun, your experience might look a little like this. You gonna go to sleep? Because I kind of have to like run around this little rock. How do I get to you? How am I supposed to get him? I don't think my paintballs can reach that far. He's just regening HP. Is that what the frickin' knife was for? Yeah, I definitely can't hit him from this side. How are you supposed to get him? Alright, I guess I'll get... dude, I'm sorry. I guess I'll get the knife. And run back. Oh, and don't run out or miss with those knives. As far as I know, those are the only ones you get. Yep, as far as I can tell, they're the only way to wake up Azure as a Blade Master. After you wake him up, it's more of the same fighting him in the Lava Zone. But thankfully, that's the last curveball this quest has for you. Why won't you die? Oh my goodness. Raid boss defeated.
アチュファーズノーズ、一等カードトゥーミーホワイルエディティングディスビデオ、ザットフラッシュ&ソニックボムズ、マイトハブオケンアップアジュールアイディドントハブエニーオンミー、ソーアイズンの。
This quest? That's right, we still have to talk about Egg Quest in the volcano. Jeez, what is it with the volcano and annoying quests in this game? Anyway, about 3/4 of the way through my playthrough, I thought egg quests are so much easier now. Well, they are and they aren't. In part 1 of the retrospective covering Monster Hunter 1, I mentioned how later games have armor skills that can help with carrying eggs during egg quests. Well, I'm happy to report the transporter skill is a godsend. The egg quests that was frustrating in Monster Hunter 1, bring me eggs, I cleared almost effortlessly with the transporter skill. And you can still use Mega and Power Juices to have infinite stamina, as well as the faster movement speed with the transporter skill. So what's the problem? Well, what if I were to tell you there was a quest even more obnoxious than bring me eggs? I'm talking about the quest Handle with Care. In this quest, you must take a powder stone, which is functionally an egg, and carry it from the opposite end of the area back to the camp. In traditional egg quest fashion, there are hidden obstacles to you that only make themselves known after you pick up the egg. I hinted at this in the first part of the retrospective. It's almost as if the developers were out to trick you with these egg quests. The monster spawns in Zone 7 change from Vespoids to Eoprey. Zone 6 has Apsaros, Zone 4 spawns Eoprey, and Zone 1 has Bullfangos. This is the route I successfully took the egg back to the camp with. I ended up having to scrap my first attempt since the Eoprey were so oppressive in 7. I looked up on the fandom wiki that you could clear monsters in 7, 6, and 1 and they would not respawn. On my first attempt, I naively thought I could just maneuver around and everything and save time, not having to worry to clear monsters. I mean, I have the transporter skill. I'm practically untouchable, right? Wrong. Zone 4 cannot be cleared of Eoprey, so good luck there. Oh, also, Gravios is here. Say hi, Gravios. Yeah, Gravios roams the zones too. He wasn't a huge hindrance for me, but I could easily see him being a much bigger roadblock for other people. So yeah, if you're lucky enough to get the egg back to the camp, then you're pretty much done. Only one egg this time. But be sure you press circle to put it in the delivery box and not X. Monster Hunter Freedom has a weird thing where circle is your interact button outside of menus, and the cancel/go back inside of menus. The X button is your roll or dodge button outside of menus, and your confirm button inside of menus. What happens if you press X while holding an egg? Yep. Well, you roll and drop it. So, yeah. Press circle to turn in your eggs. Supreme victory! Despite the past two rants, I think it's pretty clear that the positives still outweigh the negatives in the case of Monster Hunter Freedom. So, should newer fans of Monster Hunter go back and play Monster Hunter Freedom? Yes. While the overall experience is still a little rough around the edges compared to the more modern Streamlined games, Monster Hunter Freedom is good enough for me to recommend fans that want to go back to the franchise's roots. And what reasons might I have for that recommendation? Well, let's go over a few. The number one reason I would recommend Monster Hunter Freedom over Monster Hunter 1 on the PlayStation 2 is that all of the content of the game is accessible. The Gathering Hall has all of the features intact with none of it locked behind any form of online mode. Now, naturally, Monster Hunter Freedom has more content in general with it being the ultimate version of Monster Hunter 1. So, not only do you have access to the village/low rank quest and high rank quest, you also have the ability to play Master Rank content introduced in Freedom. Monster Hunter Freedom was originally released on the Sony PSP, which made an excellent game to play on the go back in 2006. And if you owned a PSP 2000 or 3000 model, you had the option to output your game to a TV either with AV or component cables. So even in 2006, you had the best of both worlds, the ability to play at home and on the go. New fans looking to play the game today may find an easier time playing the game on an emulator like I did for the playthrough featured in this video. Make sure you have a 100% legal copy of the game like I do if you do this. Wink wink. I put this at the bottom of the list, mostly because I didn't utilize the feature when I recorded my playthrough. But the fact that the game has some form of beginner onboarding to the game gives it a leg up over the original on the PS2. I'm very grateful that the developers gave us an option to choose whether you are a beginner or not. It's something some of the modern games could look back and maybe reintroduce, just so that the more veteran players of the games can sidestep all of the tutorial stuff that we kind of already know. Well, there you have it. A recommended starting point for new fans to the series. I loved the original game on the PS2, but I can't in good conscience recommend someone new to the franchise to start with it over Monster Hunter Freedom. That being said, Monster Hunter Freedom isn't perfect, and it still shows some age and rough edges. But overall, I'd say playing it is a wonderful experience, and a great way to experience the start of the franchise. Our next couple of steps on the road to Wilds will continue on the PSP with Monster Hunter Freedom 2 and Freedom Unite, with monsters, weapons, and systems introduced from Monster Hunter 2. How will they fare compared to the rock-solid Monster Hunter Freedom 1? Find out on the next episode of Road to Wilds, a Monster Hunter retrospective. And thank you for watching.